Hello and welcome to my review of Alien Heart and Dalek Soul, the new trilogy where you're basically getting two stories in one. So this is kind of a double bill review of Alien Heart and Dalek Soul. So without further ado, let's look at the cover of the story, then we'll go into my thoughts on each of these stories. So for the cover art, we've got some DNA there on the top, some DNA strands. Got the 5th Doctor, Emperor Guard Dalek, and then got the planet Traxana, I guess, and another planet. Nyssa there, being all scientific, the Doctor firing a gun, and a cell spider. Now I'm going to say with this cover, it does remind me of one of the early Big Finish stories. It gets that sort of, looks like a fan-made cover of like one of the early Big Finish stories. Got the 5th Doctor banner there, the spine, and the back. So if you want to know what each story is about, do feel free to pause. And then we've got the cast list there, and the running time being, looking at the leaflet,
hours.
Opening up inside, we have the next installment for the sort of double bill releases, which is Vortex Ice, and we've got Cortex Fire, and it sees a return of Flip and the 6th Doctor, and I love Flip, so I'm happy to see Flip return. I'm quite excited for that. Advertisement for Doctor Who magazine and production credits, and the reverse. And the cover disc art is exactly the same as the cover. So Big Finish have got this new format, like I said, you know, being two stories spread across two discs, whereas the monthly range is renowned for being one story, which is basically 4 parts, so basically your traditional classic story. Now this isn't the first time Big Finish has sort of changed the sort of format of the monthly range. Obviously Big Finish experimented doing 3-part stories and then having one solo adventure, one solo half-an-hour adventure tacked on the end just to make it a 2-hour release really. But this sort of is a what if. 5, 6 and 7 had their own range, like the 4th Doctor and 8th Doctor, with this trilogy being 2 1-hour stories. What kind of link in the case of Alien Heart and Dalek Soul, so I presume the others will follow that with sort of linking in some way. But I do believe that this format isn't staying. This is basically a little break from the 4-part stories, what the main range is renowned for doing. Now, Alien Heart and Dalek Soul see the 5th Doctor reunited with the Daleks, where he last encountered the Daleks in the monthly range in Plague of the Daleks, part of the Stockbridge trilogy, and I highly recommend the Stockbridge trilogy, which is just a magnificent trilogy of 5th Doctor stories. Now, Stephen Cole returns to the monthly range after his last story being Masquerade back in 2014, so he's returning with the 5th Doctor and Nyssa again. Now, his previous Dalek story, Apocalypse Element, is one of my favourites. It's basically the 6th Doctor in this Time War setting. It's absolutely magnificent. So will this story be another hit? Part 1 of Alien Heart. Now, before I go into the details, I will say Alien Heart is a story you will need to pay your full attention, as this story is full of science jargon. So this story, you cannot let your mind wander. Now, this story being in the 1-hour format, the story has no time to waste, so the story is very direct in that regard, and it doesn't take long for the Doctor and Nyssa to be separated. Then that leads to the scale of the story, with the Doctor being on this moon base and Nyssa being on this alien planet, which does raises some nice questions though. Who is on this base, which is a nice little reveal, and also what has happened to these planets and what are the cell spiders. But the story really does start to kick in with the last 5 minutes, with some real tense moments leading into the Alien Heartbeat. Part 2 is very much the action part. Part 1 was very much the world build and wander around a bit. So the plot really starts to kick in and starts to come into play with this, as the story does continue to world build and sort of explains the cell spiders and their origin, along with character motives, and it's a nice contrast of events, with the Doctor's side being quite fast moving and this having this quite calm side, so you the listener can sort of reflect and take it all in what's been happening, you know, in the previous sections of the story. And we do get a nice classic Dalek reveal and a very interesting ending, which can be said the same for Dalek Characters: Soul. the Doctor, Peter Davison, ever the English gent. Davison is an absolute whirlwind within this, with him darting all over the place, so you have that great youthful energy which he is sort of renowned for having with his Doctor, and that great breathy quality. We have that great caring nature of his Doctor, with him being quite urgent, which leads to him being quite commanding and forceful, which I just love seeing the 5th Doctor in that sort of authoritative status, with him just losing it. I just love him, and I think that's when you see the 5th Doctor really shine, when he's starting to be pushed to that breaking point and he's just, you know, losing it really. And then that leads to a sort of emotional side when, you know, all hope is lost in trying to find Nyssa, with his disgust in the humans. Mix that with a few witty lines and a great confrontation with the Daleks, you have a winning performance by Davison. Sarah Sutton. Now, I'm just going to say this now. Both of these stories are very much tailored for Nyssa. We have Nyssa having some great powerful moments with a really nice moral speech, and I love the curious nature of her with her trying to solve the mystery of the cell spiders. So Nyssa's very much the one pushing the plot forward. So the Doctor's, is very much the action side, and Nyssa is quite the calm and quite collective side of the story. But she does have some nice tense moments within in her half of the story. But she is very much the one driving that section of the story, and of course we do get the science side of her character, and overall Sarah Sutton does a brilliant job. Played by Eve Webster, a nice performance, quite assertive like all captains are, and very much the companion while Nyssa is away, and becomes very much a focal point in episode 2 when her and the Doctor are exploring the nature of the cell spiders. Phoebe, played by Alex Tregear. A great contrasting character to play off Nyssa, which causes this very sharp dynamic and very interesting dynamic to see as the story progresses. And I love her character motifs, and she's quite a devious character. She's not all what she seems. And yeah, a lovely character. The Daleks, played by Nick Briggs, of course, because hey, Nick Briggs is the Dalek man, I guess, and the Monster Man. And Big Finish Man, really. It's not really a spoiler that the Daleks do feature within this, and if you love a bit of continuity references, then you might like this, as there is a nice little reference to the Mavellan War with the Daleks. But the Daleks themselves are very much their 60s Daleks. Obviously, the 60s Daleks are on the cover, so hey. But their motifs are very much like that of the 1960s Daleks. They're very calculative, and they just do not tolerate failure. So there's a nice bit of Dalek action. So my overall thoughts on Alien Heart is, it isn't the best Dalek outing Big Finish have ever done, but it is still a strong Dalek story nonetheless. It has some very interesting ideas, such as the cell spiders, which are kind of eerie, and very interesting purpose and origin within the story, which is obviously explored in part 2, and that would just make you go wow. In general, the story format really works for the most part, but I will say, due to the format, the ending resolution isn't the greatest out there. Just magnificent performances across the board, and the story really does hark back to the early days of Big Finish, with it reminding me of a 1 to 50 audio. So I'm going to give Alien Heart a 7 out of 10. Now on to the second story, Dalek Soul. Now this story really does benefit the 1 hour format with the way this story is structured, and personally, I don't think you could have sustained the twist for that long if this story was a 4-parter. So from right off the bat, the story really does gel within this part format. It starts off quite dark and disturbing, so you sort of know what tone the story is going to be, which is bleak. The story has some great twists and character expansion, especially for Nyssa, and the character interactions between the Doctor and Nyssa are very interesting, to say the least, and it's quite fascinating to listen to that as the story progresses and see how that sort of changes, and just a great twist to the story. And the story sort of questions everything and raises questions, what is inside that room, and what does Toru know about Nyssa and the Doctor. And the story just in general has that great espionage feel, and what a cliffhanger to end part 2. The Dalek plot enters full swing, with the story continuing that bleak path, and a lot of questions are being raised within the story. And what I like is the story doesn't answer the cliffhanger straight away like you would expect in a traditional Doctor Who story. You're very much left in the dark of what happened until sort of halfway through that part of the story, and the story continues to twist events, and to some people that might be a bit predictable, some of those twists what are thrown at the story. And the story ending is very much left ambiguous to what happens next, so it still leaves quite a few questions unanswered, but we do see how both of these stories do link, so yeah. Characters, the Doctor, Peter Davison. Now you can really tell Davison was enjoying recording this, as we see him play a very different role, but still the Doctor, as we see him being quite cautious and trying to do the right thing. But we see the Doctor with no remorse, and he just doesn't care, which is kind of terrifying. So it's a very clever performance by him, and that's all I'm going to say without spoiling anything for you. Nyssa, Sarah Sutton. Like I said, in Alien Heart, both stories cater for her, but this one more so. Like the Doctor, we see Nyssa in a different role. We have her questioning everything she knows as she senses something is wrong within the story. Now the story really does utilise her scientific side, making her very stern and dominant. Like the story having this sort of bleak tone, that is reflected in Sarah Sutton's performance, with her just having no hope. And just the icing on the cake is the speech about the Doctor, which is just lovely. The Daleks by Nick Briggs. Now the Daleks, they don't feature heavily within this story. It's very much a character study, this story is. But you do get that sort of ominous feel that they are there in the background. And I just love the brutality of the Daleks, with them creating this biological weapon, which really does boost their fear factor. And of course you have their traditional traits, with them being quite impatient and the urgency to finish the virus. So overall, the Daleks, what bits they are in, they are pretty good. Toru, played by Jeffrey Newland, very much the voice of reason, starts to make Nyssa question what is going on. So we get to see his leader side, and he's very much a composed, cunning and wise leader, and he knows a lot about the Doctor and Nyssa, which is very much left ambiguous, and he's very much a character working in the background in the shadows of all these events what are going around the story. So what do I think of Dalek Soul? Though the idea has been done before in terms of the Doctor and Nyssa's sort of character twist in, again, the Eternal Summer part of the Stockbridge trilogy, which I think to some people it will be like a really great twist, and it is still a great twist. I mean, for me it's not exactly got the punch factor like most people have been making that twist out to be. Like I said, it is still nice, but I think the problem why it doesn't wow me as much as others is that I've seen it done before. I mean, it's not been long since I finished listening to the Stockbridge trilogy, so it's very fresh in my mind in that regards. But it's still nice to see, well, here Peter Davison and Sarah Sutton get something different to do instead of being, you know, the traditional Doctor and Nyssa. But like I said, this story is basically a great character piece, with it not focusing on the Daleks. They're very much a subplot, with the main focus being Nyssa and sort of trying to explore what has happened and what's going on. This may not be one of my favourite Fifth Doctor stories, but it certainly is one of my favourite. Sarah Sutton's performance is one of her strongest performances she's ever done for Big Finish. And I just love the bleak tone of it, and the bits the Daleks feature in are good, and it really does hark back to the 60s days, with it reminding me of Evil of the Daleks with a great twist. And it's just an enjoyable listen. Would I like the ending to be explored? Possibly, but then again, it might take away the shine of this story with that whole sort of thing, what's happening with the Doctor and Nyssa, and I think it would kind of ruin it. So maybe that's a thing to be explored, but it's not a thing I would like them to do, I guess. But if they do, it wouldn't be a bad thing, I guess. But yeah, I'm going to give Dalek Soul an 8 out of 10. Yeah, still a nice sort of twist on the Doctor and Nyssa, but like I said, it doesn't have much of a punch for me because I've listened to the Stockbridge trilogy and they sort of did the exact same thing what they kind of did here. But yeah, still a worthy release. So yeah, I would sort of recommend Alien Heart and Dalek Soul. I mean, they're not the strongest Fifth Doctor stories out there by no means, but they're just enjoyable listens to have. I mean, Alien Heart does have a little problem with pacing in terms of part one. It does sort of slog a bit in some areas, but it's still nonetheless a good. So I'm going to give this overall release a 7.5 out of 10. So still a strong release, and it's definitely worth looking into, and I'll see you in my next video, whatever that'll be. So thank you very much for watching this review, and I'll see you next time. So thank you very much, and goodbye.